The Great Wall of China is a dividing wall built in ancient China and is the largest architectural monument and UNESCO World Heritage Site. The length of the wall is almost 5,500 miles. Stop, my viewer, you didn't realize this figure. 5,500 miles or 9,000 kilometers is more distance than between New York and Los Angeles, 2,795 miles or 4,500 kilometers. More distance than between Miami and Anchorage in Alaska, 4,960 miles or 7,982 kilometers. And all branches total length about 13,170 miles or 21,196 kilometers, more than half the length of the equator. According to the Wikipedia website, the construction of the wall began in the 7th century BC. Later, many subsequent dynasties built and maintained several sections of border walls. The most famous sections of the wall were built during the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644. That is, they have been building for more than 2,500 years, and again for more than 2,500 years. It seems to us that this figure is small, but look at the modern world, how much it has changed in 100 years. The world has completely changed. Yes, even during your life, how many new technologies have appeared, and here for 2,500 years and nothing has changed, as the Chinese built this wall and are building it. Strange? Or it seems nothing ordinary to you. And then it will be even more interesting. The wall was built in the mountains at an altitude of over 1,200 miles, about 2,000 kilometers. Although the mountains are a natural barrier, why increase them further? And most importantly, from whom to defend? The wall was originally built as a defense against various nomadic groups from the Eurasian steppe. Who are these nomadic groups from the Eurasian steppe? The same Wikipedia portal says that the state of Scythia was formed there, which soon completely collapsed, and the Mongols appeared later. Although I would question their existence at all, but somehow in the next video. As can be seen from the map, the state of Scythia was located just to the west of China and the natural barrier was just the Tian Shan and Pamir Mountains. The Silk Road that passed through China, I also think it has nothing to do with it. It is much further south, and why build a border control on the Chinese wall if you don't drive up to it? At the end of the 13th century, Marco Polo made an unthinkable trip to the east on the scale of his time, visiting Mongolia, Japan, Persia, China, India. But he did not mention the Chinese wall in his writings. Didn't notice or forgot. And only the mission to China of the English Lord George Macartney in 1793 to 1794 opened the Great Wall of China to the Western world. It was the Lord who was struck by her greatness. It is worth noting that the Chinese wondered why the Europeans admire the walls so much. For them it was just ruins. And only in the 20th century the wall began to turn into a tourist attraction and national pride. Mao Zedong said that every Chinese should visit the wall. The visit of the 37th US President Richard Nixon provoked a new round of attention to the wall in the West. At the same time, it was only during the reign of Deng Xiaoping in the 80s of the 20th century that the restoration of the wall and its large-scale restoration began. Although the approach was peculiar, they completely destroyed an ancient piece and used modern technologies, bricks, concrete, imitating historical material. But despite this, most of the wall is in disrepair. A 2012 report by the National Cultural Heritage Administration says that 22% of the Great Wall of China has simply disappeared, and it's getting worse every year. Many western sections are built of clay rather than brick and stone, so are more susceptible to erosion. Wind, rain, tourists and locals, all this leads to the rapid destruction of the wall. The tourist and most famous, which is visited by about 10 million people a year, is only 75 kilometers of the wall near Beijing. In 2011, archaeologists investigated a section of the wall that is not allowed to be explored and is suppressed by the Chinese authorities. They were struck by the fact that the loopholes in this part of the wall were directed not to the north, where the nomads lived, but to the south, that is, into China. But then who and for what purpose built such a grandiose object? And what if there was some powerful state in the north that history forgot to mention? Tartary, for example. If you look at the first geographical atlas compiled by Abraham Ortelius in 1570, then we will see that where the far east of Russia is now there was Tartary, and two whole China and Cathay, and along the border of the Chinese wall is the country of Tartary, which occupies half of the Eurasian continent. Or maybe just Tartary was protected from southern guests, but no, it's probably the author's imagination. I think historians will say so. Let's continue destroying the school history. Mention of Tartary here and in the Encyclopaedia Britannica, mentioned in Edinburgh and London in 1771 to 1773. Tartary, a vast country in the northern parts of Asia, bounded by Siberia in the north and west. This is called the Great Tartary. Tatars that lie south of Moscow and Siberia are Tatars from Astrakhan, Circassia and Dagestan, located northwest of the Caspian Sea. Kalmyk Tatars, which lie between Siberia and the Caspian Sea. Uzbek Tatars and Moguls, which lie north of Persia and India, and, finally, the inhabitants of Tibet, which lie to the northwest of China. As you can see from the photo, a little has been written about such a large country, but this is enough for us to understand that there was such a country. There is also a map of this territory, but it differs from the atlas by Abraham Ortelius. But in any case it indicates the existence of this state. In 2013, scientists received analyses of vessels found during excavations in the center of modern China. The writing on the vessels was Old Russian runic, and the dishes themselves are similar to those found in central Russia. This allowed us to put forward a version that Tartary and part of China were inhabited by Slavs. Following this, mummies were discovered in China, which turned out to be tall Europeans with white skin and blonde hair. They were buried with all honors more than 3,000 years ago. And on one of them there were traces of a complex surgical operation. Genetic analyses have shown that these people were identical with the modern population of Central Russia. After this discovery, China curtailed all research, and the topic was banned. Strange why? Write in the comments, maybe you have suggestions. If we look closely at the structure of the Chinese wall, we will see that a huge amount of construction material was required for its construction. Some towers erected before the construction of the wall were built into it. There are about 25,000 towers along the entire length of the wall. 25,000 towers, and this fact does not surprise you. The towers erected together with the wall were located at a distance of up to 7,874 inches, 200 meters, from each other. During the construction of the Great Wall, the material that was massively available at that time was used: brick, wood, earth. But how was it delivered to a remote mountainous area? And now let's look at the construction of houses in the Arizona city of Phoenix. And this is a modern construction site of the century, the city of Neom in Saudi Arabia. Have you noticed one feature of these construction sites? That in Arizona, that in Saudi Arabia at the beginning for the delivery of construction material, roads are being built along which material will later arrive, but the Chinese wall is special, no roads are absolutely visible. Or maybe they were delivered by air with technologies that are currently unavailable to us, then everything is right, there should be no roads left. And how many people participated in the construction? Don't switch. Let's talk about it. Various sources mention from 200,000 to 1 million people. This is approximately 20% of the population of China. Historically, for some reason, China has always been considered a populous nation. Historians never regret the number of inhabitants for China. But if we look at the settlement map of China, it mainly lives in the east closer to the sea. And how were millions of people delivered to the construction site? And where did they live? But the wall had to be not only built, but also maintained, but by whom? Usually grandiose construction projects are accompanied by relocation or the formation of large cities, but only the capital Beijing is nearby. In general, as always, there are more questions than answers. In my opinion, the Chinese Wall is only now being built by the Chinese, no matter how strange it may sound, who are reconstructing it, and, accordingly, these sections can be called new models. But who built this grandiose structure before? I can assume that it is Tartary, which was not heard of until recently. According to one ancient Chinese legend, the Chinese civilization began with the fact that the white god Huangdi arrived to them on a heavenly chariot and taught them everything to cultivate rice, build dams, make boats and chariots, dig wells, make musical instruments, be treated with acupuncture, sew clothes, etc. He gave them a calendar and writing, taught them to write in hieroglyphs. The Slavic Aryan symbol, the swastika, is still used by the Chinese. In addition, the emperor in ancient China was considered the empowered king of the cosmos, who resided at the heavenly North Pole. So, the hieroglyphs transferred to the Chinese changed 3 times, the books written in the old hieroglyphs were destroyed, and the history of the Chinese was rewritten with these new hieroglyphs, and information about the role of the white gods in the history of China, unwanted by the scribes, was removed from it. At present, some hints of this can be gleaned from ancient Chinese mythology and folklore, which experts reconstruct from fragments of historical and philosophical writings, Shu Jing, the oldest parts of the 14 to 11 centuries BC. I Ching, the oldest parts of the 8th to 7th centuries BC. Zhuangzi, 4th to 3rd centuries BC. Letzi, 4th century BC, 4th century AD. Huinanzi, 2nd century BC. Wang Chun's Critical Judgments, 1st c. AD. The largest amount of information on mythology is contained in the ancient treatise Shanhai Jing, Book of Mountains and Seas, 4th to 2nd centuries BC, as well as in the poetry of Chu Yuan, 4th century BC. The length of the wall is many times less than how much the author does not know. Even such sites are attributed to the Great Wall of China. And the entire length, in my opinion, is just scattered sections of roads or some kind of engineering structures. Such sections are also found in Europe, the previous highly developed civilization, which for some reason decided to unite and pass off as a great Chinese structure. And historians can do this, and the Chinese are happy about it. What civilization? We will search together. Thank you very much for your attention. Subscribe to the channel, like or dislike, a lot of interesting things ahead. Until the next videos.